having to have an answer for being a woman my age in the industry, and I just didn't know. I didn't know the answer. I was getting really frustrated.
Women get older and men get
older,
dignified or character.
What are you supposed to just die when you're 40?
In the high-octane world of pop music, fame is short-lived. On average, a pop star's career burns bright for just 5 years. Madonna, at just 34 years old, was already called a veteran, and the media lambasted her with headlines such as "Grandma, calm down." Pop is built on escapism. It repels illness, imperfections, and as a result, age. It gravitates towards youth, and as a result, older pop stars are eclipsed by fresh faces. The industry's relentless focus on youth ensures that yesterday's chart toppers are swiftly co-signed into the shadows, their stardom relegated to a less glamorous rung in the celebrity hierarchy. As the next generation ascends, former icons find themselves exiled from pop. And yet, in this relentless cycle, one name continues to shine brightly: Kylie Minogue. Her enduring appeal as a pop icon isn't just about catchy tunes or dazzling performances. It's about her talent, resilience, and a unique connection with her audience. Kylie is the only female to have a UK #1 album in 5 consecutive decades. But how did Kylie challenge the status quo of youth obsession in the media with Padam Padam? How did TikTok become her unlikely saviour?
Still able, feel totally rejuvenated. Like, this is, Padam's given me so much and I'm ready for it.
How did the late 90s become a very treacherous time for Kylie to exist in? And what does her unusual career say about the treatment of pop stars overall? By the mid-90s, Kylie's star had dimmed in the eyes of the mainstream music industry. Once the golden girl of pop, her commercial success was becoming inconsistent. As the 90s progressed, Kylie found herself dismissed as uncool, yesterday's news. The emergence of grunge, Britpop and R&B redefined the musical landscape, and critics were quick to label Kylie as a relic of the 80s, a decade whose importance had waned. In this environment, Kylie was seen as an artifact, a pop star out of time, her bubblegum image clashing with the edgier tones of 90s music. The reaction to this was the resulting project, Impossible Princess, an experimental album that took influence from techno and Britpop, deconstructing Kylie in a much more personal, darker angle.
Meeting and say, right, we're going to completely change you this time, what will we do?
However, NME called her a fraud for the style change. And even worse, Virgin Radio UK, a major player in the British music scene, boldly declared in an ad campaign that they had made Kylie's songs sound better because they don't play them. This wasn't just a jab at Kylie, it was an outright attempt to erase her relevance. The album at the time was poorly reviewed and mocked in the media, yet in later retrospective reviews it was heavily praised. So what was the original problem with the record? I believe the media's harsh statements weren't merely a reflection of musical taste, they were a declaration that Kylie's time had passed, a sentiment reinforced by an industry obsessed with discarding its older icons in favour of the next youthful sensation. Now you might say Virgin Radio felt compelled to mock her openly because they just didn't like her music. Well, if you stick around later in this video, I'm going to take a deep dive analysis into just how ageist radio has always been. Was Kylie truly out of touch, or was the industry simply unwilling to allow a woman approaching her 30s to redefine herself? The perception of being uncool wasn't just a label, it was a way to disempower her, to strip her of her credibility. To add fuel to the fire, the late 90s saw a shift in music trends, the revival of pop music, but now under the guise of bubblegum teen pop, with artists like Britney Spears and NSYNC dominating the charts. This new wave of pop was so youth-orientated, glossy, commercially packaged, everything that Kylie had been in the 1980s. But now at nearly 30, Kylie was viewed as an artifact from her bygone era, overshadowed by a new generation of stars who represented the industry's preferred youthful look. Impossible Princess was a creative risk that was savagely mocked. She was no longer the ingenue, she was defined as the elder stateswoman. a role that for a pop star is often synonymous with being irrelevant. The industry's obsession with youth pushed her to the margins. So, in an industry that worships youth, how did Kylie reclaim her position as a pop icon? Well, let's just say Parlophone made a risk of a potential gamble on a has-been. As the new millennium became closer, Kylie signed with Parlophone, a label that was taking a risk on an artist who had been wildly seen as over the hill. She was an 80s has-been in the eyes of many, a pop star who had her time and had gone. The industry wasn't expecting much from Kylie, and I think actually that was probably her greatest advantage. Why? Because without the burden of such high expectations, she was free to reinvent herself. Producers decided to move towards a post-disco sound, echoing the high-energy dance sound of her 80s heyday. This was a calculated move to tap into nostalgia, but it was a bold statement. Kylie was not running away from her past, no. She was embracing it with a modern Y2K twist. When Spinning Around was released as the lead single from her new album, it was more than just a song. It was this declaration of opposition and resilience. The track catapulted her to #1 in the UK and Australia, reigniting her career and proving that she was of course still able to dominate the pop scene. Her first chart-topping smash in a decade, it created the momentum that led to a creative resurgence that allowed her to dominate the next decade of pop music with anthems that defined a generation. Now, if we were maybe in a Disney film, that would be Kylie's Happily Ever After. And of course her success in the 2000s was unprecedented. Can't Get You Out of My Head went to #1 in over 40 countries. But as the 2010s progressed and Kylie was on the wrong side of 40, a familiar problem once again began rearing its head. Ageism.
My previous album promotion, where I was just asked so much about having to have an answer for being a woman my age in the industry, and I just didn't know the answer. I was getting really frustrated.
Kylie, although still a force to be reckoned with in the touring world, and still managed to achieve a #1 album with disco in 2020, had all but vanished from the singles chart. Her last top 10 was in 2010, and I'd argue that there is a sinister reason for that. But before we look into it, we need to revisit the summer of 2023 and how it laid the groundwork for a Kylie revolution.
Fabulous. Stuff of dreams, honestly.
Awesome.
Its video was a saturation of red and was thoroughly eye-catching. The combination of normal locations staging odd and almost otherworldly interactions was an interesting visual. The song, released just as Pride Month was starting, was definitely not an accident and played into Kylie's legacy of a beloved gay icon. Just as Pride parties would generate enormous social gatherings that needed both classic tracks and new bops. However, it's important to note that major radio stations gave the song next to no airplay. One inside source claimed that allegedly, the radio executives argued that Padam was geared towards an older demographic and not their audience, coded language to dismiss older women. This sly, underhanded system has consistently blocked numerous older artists' adequate promotion. How can a pop queen triumph if mainstream media don't play their music? It brings up the age-old argument of the supposed generational differences regarding music, differences I believe are often socially constructed by the ageist media. However, the song quickly went on to find a new audience on TikTok and quickly took off like a rocket.
And the song has racked up, get this, more than 30 million views on TikTok.
Its simple but unusual lyrics were incredibly relatable to a wide variety of situations, meaning endless scenarios were filmed using the chorus as its backing music. The club energy and choreo of the music video created a dance trend, and when you combine these two viral phenomenon together, you create a huge viral hit, which translates into huge streams and therefore a chart comeback. Padam eventually landed at #8 on the UK charts, her first top 10 since All the Lovers in 2010, 13 years prior. And yet, BBC Radio 1 still wouldn't play the song. In a ridiculous turn of events, when counting down the official UK top 10 in the summer of 2023, every song was played except Padam. The song soared from 23 to 8, a huge triumph and history-making comeback. Kylie was now the only female to have a top 10 single in 5 consecutive decades, and BBC still refused to play her. A spokesperson for the radio station claimed each track is considered for the playlist based on its musical merit and whether it is right for our target audience, with decisions made on a case-by-case basis. So given the fact that Padam was excluded from airplay, can we surmise the big wigs didn't feel it aligned with their target audience, a traditionally younger audience? It exposed a pro-youth attitude in mainstream media, and it made me wonder how many other potential hits by older women were excluded from the airwaves and subsequently went unnoticed because they didn't have the luxury of going viral on TikTok.
I'm having the time of my life. Every day friends are texting going, check this one, or the memes and the TikToks.
And ultimately, TikTok has changed the system from its very foundations, helping older artists to bypass traditional ageist media. Just like MTV altered the game with visuals, social media has changed the game with the algorithm. Kylie found a new avenue to thrive and became victorious in an industry who attempted to reduce Kylie to a much-loved legacy singer, when in fact, a whole new era of pop music was imminent if it was only given the chance to be heard.
Because I love what I do, there's always a song that hasn't been written, that hasn't been sung. I'm still able, feel totally rejuvenated. Like Padam's given me so much and I'm ready for it.
Capital FM has an annual huge concert in Wembley, and the surprise guest in 2023 was Kylie, singing what song? Padam, a track Capital FM initially refused to play. The ultimate last laugh, or last Padam, and another huge win for Minogue. In the autumn of 2023, Kylie continued to sail on her success curve when the album Tension soared to #1, effectively outselling the rest of the top 10 combined. Her 5th consecutive decade of chart-topping albums, becoming the only woman to achieve this feat. Acclaimed reviews became ubiquitous. Tension had created an album of delicious, diverse and confident and creative new pop material, with numerous publications including it on their list of the best albums of the year. Kylie followed this up with her career first, her own headlining Vegas show that received glittering praise for its intimate atmosphere and anthemic song selections. Her success in the US continued when Tension opened with the biggest first-week sales of her career in 20 years and was the week's top-selling album at the time of its release. And to cement her relaunch into the upper echelons of pop, Padam was nominated for a Grammy, her first Grammy nomination in 15 years. The Potomac was solidified. Kylie swam upstream in direct opposition to the youth obsession that had possessed the glittering world of pop, exposing radio, thriving on TikTok and dominating the charts. Chart analyst James Patterson summed up her glorious year by acknowledging that she had bridged the gap between her loyal fan base and a new generation of music listeners, and long may it continue. Hi, I'm Diva Talk, and thank you for watching.